Chemistry is all about studying molecules and their molecular structure because that gives us an idea of what these substances can and cannot do. But how do we know molecular structure? Believe it or not, that knowledge only goes back to the 1800s. And therein lies an interesting story. August Kekulé, German chemist, very well known at that time. I mean, most of the chemistry at that time was done in Germany. Was wondering about how atoms are joined together. They knew, for example, that there were molecules that had 6 carbons in them. They were able to determine that, but how were they linked? So he began to philosophize about this and thought, yeah, well, they must be linked to each other, very much like in a chain. And that we know, that was a correct idea. But there was one substance which had 6 carbons in its molecule that had properties that were different from all other molecules that Kekulé had encountered, which also had 6 carbons. So he wondered, what is going on here? How can you have the same number of carbons and yet the properties be totally different? And then as he told the story in 1890 about his discovery that happened 25 years earlier, but it was in 1890 that he first told the story, of how one day he was daydreaming, thinking about molecules. And then he dreamt of a snake. And the snake was curling all over the place and then snared its tail. And that gave him the clue that maybe those 6 carbon atoms could be attached, not in a straight chain, but in a ring. And that molecule is benzene. And it had been controversial because nobody understood what it was really like in terms of molecular structure. So this apparently came to Kekulé in a dream, but there's some controversy about it because he only told that dream story in 1890, 25 years after he had written a paper about the discovery of benzene, when he never mentioned the dream story. So was the dream story just dreamed up in order to establish his priority because others had ventured into the game too and talked about cyclic molecules? We'll never know. But Kekulé does get credit for being the father of molecular structure. Benzene, of course, has been in the news a great deal because it is part of petroleum, so it gets into the air when gasoline burns, and we end up inhaling it, which is not a good thing because benzene is carcinogenic, which means it causes cancer, mostly leukemia. And that is a problem in an occupational setting, in the petroleum industry and some other industries where they use benzene as a solvent. It is also found in tobacco smoke in high concentrations, one of the reasons that tobacco is carcinogenic. So not breathing is not an option. So we do inhale some benzene all the time because it's there in the air. And undoubtedly, some benzene is responsible for some cases of leukemia. There's no safety, of course, total safety in life. We have to consider all of these kind of risks. But knowing molecular structure is very important in terms of determining toxicity because now, based on molecular structure, we do have an idea of what is toxic and what isn't toxic. And so all of that goes back to the story of the snake biting its own tail in a dream, which may have been dreamed up.